When I was about 22 years old, I worked at a construction site to help put myself through college. I didn't mind the work hours, the pay was pretty great, and it gave me time to study and focus on my work. Now, for the most part, I really enjoyed working construction. I was really into labor back then, and I'm a big gym goer, so lifting and moving heavy things is just something I do naturally. However, there was one instance at a construction site, and I will never forget. It was the first job of that spring. I had worked with a guy named Tony. Well, at least that's what I'll call him for this story. Tony started out as a really great guy. He had been around construction for a very long time, and this was one of my first construction jobs, so he helped show me the ropes. However, as time went on, I began to realize that Tony was not someone I wanted to be around. He was quick to anger. He yelled at people a lot. I also noticed that he was kind of a loner. He never ate with the rest of us, and he didn't speak to anyone either, except for myself. I thought maybe he was just someone who didn't like people. What I remember most about Tony was that he was always on his phone. Now, at a construction site, that's highly looked down on. I mean, of course, in most workplaces, you were not to be on your cell phone, but you should understand that with all the power tools and drills that we were around, being distracted by anything, including a cell phone, was a big no. However, Tony didn't care. He was always texting. He left his site a lot to go answer the phone. And some of us speculated as to who it was. We thought maybe it was a girlfriend. I personally thought maybe he had a sick father or something, as my own parent was ill at the time. One night, however, Tony had stayed late with me and one other person. He had taken another cell phone call, one of these mysterious calls that would take him away for 10, 15 minutes at a time, and he came back. He asked me if I could give him a ride to his house. Now, I'm a really nice guy, and I normally say yes. Some of the construction site workers didn't have cars at the time, and I'm a bit spoiled. And my parents had bought me one when I turned 18. So I often gave rides anyway, but I just didn't feel comfortable giving Tony one. There was something about the way he asked, in a creepy, very slow voice, almost like he was trying to hide something. I declined, and I lied, saying I really had to go home to study, when truthfully I was already on spring break. He rolled his eyes and asked the other person for a ride. I went home. The next morning I came to work, and I saw all the guys were standing around in a circle, and they looked upset and terrified. I asked them what had happened. It turns out the other guy, who I didn't know too well and quite honestly don't remember his name, had taken Tony home, but he ended up in the hospital. It turns out Tony had robbed the guy. He had let him take him to his house, and right before he exited the vehicle, attacked him with a hammer from work. The guy lived. He was able to call 911 and give them his location and rat Tony out. Tony wasn't exactly the smartest person actually giving him his address, but luckily for us, his stupidity got him arrested. Now, I wasn't the victim of this crime, but it's really scary knowing that this could have been me. He had asked me to take him home, and if I hadn't listened to my quote-unquote sixth sense, I could be dead. I used to be a very trusting person before this incident. I always gave everyone the benefit of the doubt, even if they didn't deserve it, but not anymore. I can't help but wonder what would have happened if it was me. Thank God it wasn't. I have worked in construction for about 10 years now, and I thoroughly enjoy it. However, I've seen and heard some pretty weird stuff before. This is by far the weirdest story. I don't really share that often as I don't have any facts to back it up, only speculation, but I'll leave it up to you to believe it. My second or third year, I got a job working on a highway that was projected to take about 4 to 5 years to complete. I met plenty of interesting people along the way. One guy in particular was named Michael. Pretty nice guy, as he showed me the ropes, showed me around, and introduced me to everyone, ate lunch with me and everything. Like I said, awesome dude. Anyway, this guy was also kind of strange. I noticed that even though he introduced me to everyone, he himself never really spoke. He was very quiet and very fidgety. What stuck out the most to me about Michael, however, was that every Monday and every Wednesday, he brought with him a blue duffel bag. Now, it took about a month for all of us to catch on. Most construction workers go to the gym after work or before work, so having a duffel bag in and of itself wasn't really strange. But he only had it Monday and Wednesdays, and he would never let anyone near it. We all began to speculate what was inside of it. Some people believed there were weapons, but for the most part, we all speculated drugs. It soon turned into a fun little guessing game. We never got it right, and whenever we asked him about it, he would change the subject or just walk away. This continued on for about a month or so, until one day, Michael stopped showing up with the duffel bag. Some of the guys at work began asking him where it was just to mess with him. Michael continued to do what he had been doing, either walking away, ignoring them, or he just changed the subject. I, however, noticed something different. Michael wasn't relaxed anymore. He was very fidgety, and he seemed to be looking around a lot, often over his shoulder, literally over his shoulder, as if he was waiting for someone to come out of the woodwork and startle him. One day, as we all left our shifts to go home, Michael was on the phone. I and another guy were walking towards our vehicles when we saw him talking on the phone, or rather, listening. Michael wasn't saying anything, but we had noticed he had been standing over there for a few minutes, and we noticed that he wasn't speaking. When he hung up, I asked him if everything was okay. He didn't answer me. He just got in his car and drove away. The next morning, I came in for my shift, expecting Michael to be there. However, he never showed up. Now, this really wasn't out of the ordinary. Construction workers have a history on any construction site, whether it's a building or a road, of just not showing up the next day. Why that is, I have no idea, but Michael not appearing didn't strike anyone as odd. We figured he had just walked off the job like so many other workers before him had done. It was about 3 weeks later that we discovered the horrible truth. I actually came into work early, expecting to get some work done so I could leave early as well, as I had a dinner that night. A bunch of the guys were standing around in a circle, with one guy with his phone out looking through it. I asked what was wrong. He held up his phone and showed me a text message. The message has read that Michael was dead. I asked if this was some type of prank or a joke, and I said it wasn't funny. However, I quickly realized that after looking at their faces, they were being completely serious. I asked what had happened. They told me that his body was discovered in the woods north of his house. We didn't work very well that day. I especially, as I was still a little bit skeptical. I went home, and since I work during the day, I usually read up on the news at night. I specifically looked for this story, and it only took me about 5 minutes to find it. And I read it. They put his name in there. It was definitely Michael. But one thing that they also put in was the blue duffel bag. Now, they didn't say what was in it in this particular article, but a few days later, it was revealed that it was heroin. Michael was a drug runner. His clients only asked for drugs on Mondays and Wednesdays after his job was over. It was ingenious, really. Construction workers are known for going to the gym so often, so him bringing a duffel bag really wasn't out of the ordinary, and it wouldn't have drawn any type of suspicion. Now, I don't know if this has anything to do with how he was behaving the last day of work, and I don't know why he was out there. We speculated about it a little bit. Some of us think that maybe he was using the product he was selling. Others believe that he tried to get away, but they wouldn't let him. This happened years ago, but we still don't know who killed him. But it's just so creepy knowing that someone I worked with not only was a drug dealer, but was murdered as well. I quit working on that site about a year after Michael's murder. But every so often, he still crosses my mind. Whatever happened to him? Who did it? I wonder if these questions will ever have answers. All I know is, I hope they catch them soon.